training. So for some of you, this is the first time that you're going through this training. For others, you might have gone through it before, and this is just a refresher. Either way, thanks for being here. You don't really need to have anything other than if you have your DISC report handy, that will be great. Just so that you can remember, what your DISC profile is. Are you a D, a C, I, or S? If you don't have it, don't worry about it. I'm going to give you guys a copy of this recording. You can get a copy of the slides if you want to. The whole point really is just to kind of learn and just kind of jump with both feet in. So let's go ahead and get started. This is a presentation that I normally do in person. And so the way that I usually start off is saying, so guys, imagine for a moment that you could have this superpower ability to walk into any room, build rapport, become more persuasive, have better communication skills, better leadership skills, build rapport, like all this different stuff. Would that be a pretty cool power to have? And I'll say, raise your hand if you agree, and then people in the audience will agree, and I'll say, that's exactly what DISC allows you to do, is to become better at those things. So what this little presentation and training is going to do is I'm going to talk about what it is, how does DISC work, and most importantly, why should I care, and how can I apply it at work? We won't be doing role playing today. That's more of the in-person training. And then definitely Q&A. So stop me along the way. Just remember to unmute yourself and ask any questions. There is a chat feature on this. I rather you don't do the chat because it's just too many things for me to look at, the chat, the this and that. So if you have a question, just unmute yourself and ask. And we will do key takeaways at the end. Okay. So let's see. There we go. So most people communicate the same way with everyone regardless of the situation, right? And that may be good or bad. What DISC teaches us is that there's different types of people, so in theory we should have different methods for communication. Most of us grew up hearing or learning the golden rule, which was treat others the way that you would like to be treated. Right? I think it comes from the Bible, and it's been around forever and ever, or do unto others as you would done unto you. Same thing, good advice, it's a good rule, but now that we've grown up and we're adults and we're business owners and entrepreneurs, we realize that there's actually something better than the golden rule, and that is the platinum rule. And the platinum rule is treat others the way they want to be treated, okay? Because just because I like to be treated a certain way doesn't mean that I should treat Alpesh and Matt and Myra that way. I need to figure out what each of you like and what you don't like and treat you accordingly, right? So golden rule is good, platinum rule is even better. And so the reality is that people do business with people that they know, like, and trust. And the reality is, who do people like and trust? Is people that they find similar to themselves, people that have commonalities, things in common. So this is a human nature. We don't do it on purpose, but we do tend to hang out with, spend time with, and like people that have similar traits, characteristics, ideas, beliefs as we do. Right? And so that happens in business as well. And so we have to be cognizant of that. And so DISC teaches us to find ways to create those commonalities and those things in common with other people so that we can build rapport with them. So consider this is that if you've, for any of you that have kids or have people in your life for that matter, it's, oftentimes if you've ever had a conversation with a child, a spouse, an employee, and you just couldn't get your point across, like they just didn't understand what you were trying to say. Obviously, of course, we would probably blame it on them, like they're silly, they're dumb, they don't get it, they're closed-minded, And so what we tend to do is just increase the quantity of the communication. In other words, say the same thing over and over again hoping that they'll understand, or maybe raise your voice, raise the volume, and hoping that will get them to understand. And so it doesn't work. It's ineffective communication. In the end, again, another thing that DISC teaches us is not to increase the quantity of the same communication, but to improve the quality of the communication. And so again, one of the things that you'll get out of learning DISC and really studying it, practicing, and becoming a master of it. So DISC will help you become a more effective leader, improve your communication skills, close more sales, build rapport with anyone much faster, increase your ability to persuade. And you know, if you're a business owner, who wouldn't want those things, right? Whether you're a business owner, business professional, if you're a parent, if you're married, this is stuff that you can apply. I can personally attest to that. DISC has been one of the most beneficial, powerful things that I've learned in the last 7 years, and now kind of teaching it, being a student of it, I've just found that it's helped me in every aspect of my life, including business. So now let's dive into a little bit as to what it is and how it works. So let's start with the 2 gauges that DISC is built from. So one is speed, the other is temperature. So when we think of speed, people are either direct or indirect. They're either, you know, fast or slow with the way that they think, speak, and act, right? And you'll get this, right? Sometimes there are people who are just, they talk fast, they move fast, they're like very, and then there's people who tend to talk a little slower and they take long pauses, right? You ever like talk to somebody who that, like, you ask them a question and then they go, that I'm a very fast person, so sometimes it's very difficult for me, like, to slow down, to engage someone who's so on the opposite end. So speed is definitely one thing, right? Which makes you either direct or indirect. And then the temperature of the person, meaning are they more open, are they more guarded, right? So when we think of somebody who's guarded, you know, somebody with their arms crossed, somebody who kind of keeps people a little bit away, who has that like kind of barrier that you got to kind of penetrate to get through. And then there's people that you meet and then they're like hugging and kissing you and like they connect with you and they spill their beans and tell you their whole life story, right? So that's what we're talking about when we talk about speed and temperature. Though that's where basically, you know, we start building the foundation of what DISC is all about. So now let's go a little deeper into that. And so when you look at this and consider that the red quadrant is the D, then the yellow is the I, the green is the S, and the blue is the C. There's different degrees of that as well, right? So just because we say someone is a D, there's different degrees of that, right? And there's different degrees of everything. So that's why you can have like millions of different combinations of people and their personalities, because there isn't just 4 types of people. There's maybe thousands of different combinations between the different degrees and the different levels of each one. So your red and yellow, meaning your D's and your I's, these people are going to be more direct. Okay, so D's and I's tend to be more direct, where the blue and the green, the C's and the S's, are more indirect people. And then when we look at guarded versus open, you know, the C's and the D's tend to be more guarded, whereas the S's and I's tend to be more open in their personality style. Okay, so now that you got the basics, let's get even further into it. So what does D actually stand for? So D stands for dominance, the I is influence, the S is steadiness, and the C is conscientious. So that's essentially what they mean. And here's a fun little way. I love this. This is a great way to kind of remember. So this is where I'm going to use some audience participation. So if you'd like to participate, please unmute yourself. And all right, so when you think of an eagle, so by the way, the eagle is the D. So I want somebody to give me some adjectives to describe an eagle. So when you think of an eagle, what do you think about? Who wants to go? Come on, I need somebody to speak up.
Strong.
I'm sorry?
Control. Strong.
Strong, okay. Yeah, what else?
A little bit more aggressive.
Yeah, aggressive, strong. What else?
Dominant.
Yeah, dominant. Yeah, I think Alpesh said authoritative. Absolutely. So those are all great descriptors of a D, of an eagle, who's the D. Now let's think of the I. The I is the parrot. So when you think of a parrot, what do you think of?
Parrot.
Repeating.
Repeating. Okay. Yeah. So they talk, right? Parrots
Easier
talk. What?
to get by. I don't. Easy to deal with. More change easily or adapt easier.
Yeah, I think you guys are overthinking it. Like a parrot is fun. They talk. They're colorful. They're engaging. You know, they're kind of like a D. A D. You're not gonna like really have an eagle as a pet. You know what I mean? Like whereas a parrot, like they're talkative. They're colorful. They're beautiful. They're very spontaneous. Yeah. That's an eagle. What would be a dove? When you think of a dove, what do you think of?
Peacemaking.
Peace. Absolutely. What else? How do they look at it? When you see that dove, what do you think of? How does it?
Peaceful.
Peaceful, yeah. Sincere, sensitive, loving, excellent, absolutely. And then the owls. So the owls, when you think of an owl, what do you think of?
Deep thinking.
Thinking, yes. Analyzing, yes. What else?
All the time watching what's going on.
Yeah, yeah. Like they're kind of slow to take action, right? They're quick to think, but they're slow to take action. But when they do take action, they're pretty precise, right? They're also fierce hunters as well. Absolutely, good stuff. So now let's look at that. Let's look at some adjectives that describe the four different quadrants. So when you think of a D, so what are some descriptors of the D? You got driving, determined, doer, dramatic, demanding, decisive, and dynamic. When you think of an I, inspirational, impressive, interesting, impressionable, inducing, interactive, and interested. The S, the dove, supportive, stable, sensitive, submissive, status quo, sentimental, shy, and specialist. The C is cautious, calculating, careful, compliant, competent, concerned, and contemplative, right? So, and by the way, guys, when you are, whatever your strength is, if you're a D or an S or an I or a C, that strength is also your weakness, okay? So you may look at some of these descriptions and think, wow, that's great, I'd love to be that, but realize that with that comes some potential downsides, right? Every characteristic essentially has that Achilles heel that you have to be on the lookout for. All right, so let's keep going here. And so ultimately, when we think of the Ds, they are powerful. They're attracted to situations of power. They like that. They exude that, right? When you think of an I, I's are about fun, popularity, and kind of being out there in the limelight. When you think of the S, right, they like that steadiness, that peacefulness, that serene, that tranquility. That's what the S's really strive on. And then the C's are all about getting things right. They're all about perfection. And again, all good and all bad in different ways, right? So keep that in mind. Keep in mind that we're not just one. Even if you're like a really high S or a really high I, you still have the other components, right? And your personality is made up of the different degrees of all four. All right, so here's the world's population. Not sure why that's in here and why we need to know that, but it's in here. And it's interesting because, I always find that it's kind of interesting. I always say that if we had more S's in the world, we'd have probably more peace, tranquility, as opposed to war and all that ugly stuff, which I hate to say it, I'm a D, but I wish there was less D's in the world, right? That's just my personal opinion. So if you're building a team, who is the best type of personality? And this is a trick question, so anybody wants to speak up. So, you know, what sort of people do you want on your team?
Depends on the role.
That's a good point. It depends on the role. What's another answer to that question?
You will need one for each at least.
There you go. Is that everybody brings something to the table, right? So ideally, yes, depending on the role, you'll kind of pick a profile, but eventually you do want a team that's well-rounded, right? So when we look here at Ds, what do Ds bring to the team? Is they provide direction, they use power, and they bring decisiveness to a team. When you look at the I, their emphasis is on participation. They're the cheerleaders for a company. It's enthusiasm. They use emotion as their leverage, and they bring inspiration to the team. The S's, their emphasis is on inclusion. They provide stability. They use sincerity, and they bring harmony to the group. Very important. And then the C's, the C's, their emphasis is accuracy. They provide analysis, they use logic, and they bring objectivity to the team. So there's value in all of the different profiles. So again, on here, to Matt's point is, you know, we always say that if you're looking to hire a salesperson, for example, you may want to look at D's and I's. Whether if you're, you know, looking to hire a bookkeeper, I probably would not hire a bookkeeper or an accountant who's a very high I. You know, I would probably want to C doing my books. If I'm hiring a customer service position, I would probably be looking for an S to handle customers and that front line. All right, so D's, looking more at D's here. So this is all about D's. I'm not going to read every single word, but look at some of the descriptors first, some of the things that describe that D, the goal, and then look at the value to the team. You know, so they bring that, you know, bottom line thinking. They like challenges. They're very innovative. In the ideal environment is you want to give D freedom to act. You want to allow them to express their ideas. You don't want to give them routine work. That's one way to run out a D, is to give them routine work, busy work, that kind of stuff. And they love challenges and opportunities. Now, this is what I like this slide because this shows us the downside of a D. So under stress, a D can become demanding, nervy, aggressive, egotistical, bullying, and kind of get to that point attitude. Possible limitations is they overuse their position, they set very high standards, they lack tact and diplomacy, they take on too much, too soon, too fast, and the emotion of a high D is anger, right? So not to get into politics, but whether you like him or not, our current president of the United States is a very high D. Right, he's most likely he's a DC would be my guess, or a CD. I think probably a DC personality. Whereas if you think of the previous president, when you think of Barack Obama, he's that S personality, right? So again, you know, a D. Now look at the I. So again, look at some of the descriptors of that parrot, the I, right? So charming, confident, convincing, enthusiastic, right? So think of like Tony Robbins. Like Tony Robbins is a total I, right? Value to the team, optimism, enthusiasm, creative problem solver, motivation. Ideal environment is they got to be around, be able to express their ideas. Under stress, an I can become self-promoting, overly optimistic, gabby or talkative, and unrealistic. Possible limitations for the I is inattention to details, unrealistic appraisals, they trust people indiscriminately, they're situational listeners, yes, I've been accused of that, scattered, finishing things, not starting them, all these kind of different things. And then the emotion of a high I is egotistical. Okay, now let's look at the S. So again, the S, the dove, I call them the golden retrievers of the people world. They're amiable, friendly, good listener, patient, relaxed, sincere, lots of good stuff. Value to the team is they're dependable, They can work under leadership. They're very patient. They're logical, and then they're service oriented, right? They're kind of that win-win person. Ideal environment is they want stability and predictable. Long-term, they don't like conflict, and they don't like rules that are very kind of restrictive. Under tendency or stress tendency, non-demonstrative, unconcerned, hesitant, or inflexible. So they kind of like just check out. They just zone out. They kind of just retreat and go into like a kind of a cave kind of thing. Possible limitations could be they yield in order to avoid conflict. Difficulties setting priorities. They dislike change. They're troubled by diversity, and they do not like to multitask. Part of the problem of S's is also not saying no enough. Like if you're a high S, you're the guy or gal to call. Like if somebody needs a ride to the airport or help moving, you're the sucker that they call because you're so nice, you hate to say no, that you find yourself like helping somebody move on a Tuesday instead of like making like, sales calls, right? So, and then the emotion of a high S is stubborn. So they can dig their heels in and just basically become like, you can't move them or budge them because they just get so stubborn with stuff. Now let's look at C's. So got some good things on here as well. They're accurate, analytical, conscientious, courteous, all this kind of stuff. With the team, they help you maintain high standards. They clarify. I love this. They're the anchor of reality, right? The C's are always like, well, we can't do that. We've never done it before. Like they kind of keep you in check. That's good for the high I's, right? Or the D's. They're good at problem solving. And in their environment, they need to do work that allows them to do a lot of thinking, right? I find C's in technical work type of jobs, specialize in certain things. They like to work in smaller groups, familiar work environment. Under stress, the C can become pessimistic, picky, fussy, overly critical. Possible limitations of a C is they can become defensive, they get bogged down in details, overly intense in certain situations. They may appear cool and aloof, and they're slow at decision making. The emotion of a high C is fear. All right. So now you might be asking yourself or saying to yourself, okay, now I have a good understanding of, what does it mean to be a D, an I, an S, or a C, and the good and the bad of each, the role that they play to the team. But how do I know how to read other people? Because obviously we ran DISC assessments on you guys. We're not going to run a DISC assessment on every person before you have a conversation with them, right? So you got to find ways to determine what other people are. Okay, so an easy way is by the way someone walks. So how do you guys think a D walks into a room?
Walks into the room, tries to command the room.
Yeah, by doing what?
Chest up out in front and
yeah,
probably hands to the side.
There you go. So chest out. Yeah. What else?
The Superman pose.
Yeah, there you go. So what's some other ways that a D walks into a room? Can you hear a D walk into the room?
Probably they have very strong steps or strong walk.
Absolutely, loud steps, and it's not that they want to get your attention, but they want to like their presence to be known, right? So they do walk in, they slam the door, loud steps, and they may not say anything, but they want people to know, hey, I'm here, kind of thing, right? Whereas an I always say, how does an I walk into the room? Like an I walks in like, what's up, party people, giving hugs, high fives to people, right? They're wanting attention, absolutely. An S, how would an S walk into a room? What would an S do? You got to know this stuff, guys. How are you going to?
Very cautious, maybe.
No,
not
that's
fast, not that strong.
Yeah, so I always say like the S's walk in, they're fairly quiet. They're not invisible, right? But they're quiet, and they'll tend to, they'll what?
They drift in. They're not making waves as they come in, but they're just kind of floating in.
Yeah, and you can usually see an S walk in because they'll walk in kind of quiet, but they'll gravitate to someone they know, and they usually like hug and kiss a lot, you know, and they embrace, and they tend to stick to one person as opposed to talking to people that they don't know, right? So, whereas a C, and I always kind of make a joke, how does a C walk into a room? Well, we don't know because we've never actually seen a C walk into the room because they're kind of invisible or quiet. They want no attention drawn to themselves, and then before you know it, like, oh, when did you show up, right? Like they just show up out of nowhere. So walking is definitely, you can definitely start telling, you know, what profile someone is. The other thing is the talk. So how does a D talk?
Loud.
Yeah, loud. What
Doesn't care to
else?
be heard, yeah.
Yeah. What about speed? Fast or slow?
They're fast.
Yep. So these are fast, loud talkers, absolutely. Whereas an I, so D's, how would you distinguish a D from an I though? Because those can be tricky in the talking.
D controls
Like
the
how they
conversation.
acting. It's
Yeah.
more like, I is more like bubbling, and D is more like firm, loud but firm, and I don't know,
Yeah.
more steady.
D's direct.
Yeah, so by what they say, how they say. So a D, so an I will definitely out-talk a D, no doubt about it. Ds will actually say less words, and then even the body language, right? So the eyes are going to be more animated, hands up in the air, kind of thing, and they'll out-talk the D, but the I's will also be fast talkers and loud talkers. Okay, so that's why sometimes you can confuse the D with the I. You got to pay attention to like, how much are they actually talking, like the words that they're using, the descriptive words, are they controlling the conversation, or are they kind of like adding to the conversation kind of thing? So there's different kind of little clues. Shaking hands, how would like that D personality shake hands?
Firm, strong.
Yep, right, absolutely. And why is that?
Because they're confident.
Yeah, and they want to kind of show. You ever shake
And
hands with
dominant.
yeah, you ever shake hands with like a guy who like they want to like break your every like bone in your hand, and they want to show you, and they'll turn their palm like down, like that's a control kind of thing, right? So, you know, versus, you know, the S, the opposite would be the S. You know, you ever shake somebody's hand and it's like a wet little noodle, you know, it's like all soft and limb, you know, that's kind of the S, right? And then I always make the joke of like, how does a C shake hands? And I say they don't, because they've analyzed how many germs are on people's hands and they refuse to shake hands, right?
Hey Juan, sorry. Did you go over the S and the C for talking?
No, I'm skipping, but you can.
Okay.
We can go back to it.
That's my C, buddy.
Yeah. See, that's his C. He's saying, hey, you skipped some stuff. Yeah. Did you have a question on how the S's and C's would talk?
I just wanted to fill it in.
Yeah.
As we went through it. For
Perfect
completeness.
example. For completeness, the C wants to be complete. Yeah. So definitely, you know, I would say that the S's and the C's are going to be the slower, quieter talkers. So those can get confusing. Like, you're listening to someone, are they an S or a C? I think that the S will talk more than the C generally, although that's not necessarily true. I think it's the purpose in which they talk, right? The S wants to talk to create the unity, harmony, and peace, and they're more about supporting the conversation that's already taking place, where I think the C tends to kind of flex their intelligence muscle more, maybe add more, direct more, and kind of talk more about, you know, well, in my experience, well, you know, based on the research I've read, you know, that kind of stuff, whereas the S's would be more like, yeah, you're right, I do see that, you make a good point, you know, that kind of stuff. So not sure if that helps, Matt, fills in a little bit.
No, that was helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, great. And then even, you know, gestures and postures, right? So I talked about that, you know, the D's and C's are going to be a little bit more controlled with their body language, right? Where the D's and the I's are going to be all over the place with their hands and stuff. So absolutely. And even eye movements. Now, this is more advanced stuff. I don't get into that too much, but there is research that shows that if you're talking to someone based on where their eye movements go, if it goes up left, then they're a C versus, you know, down to the right, whatever. Way too advanced for me, but there is some scientific research to show that. So if all that fails, there are some other things that you can do. And really, as you're processing all of this information, so let's say you're having a conversation with someone and you're trying to figure out, you know, what is this person? Really just kind of the way that your brain should work should be like this. It's like the first step is to kind of determine if they're kind of fast or slow, right? So if the person is like fast paced, they're doing a lot of talking, their voice is loud, there's a lot of inflection to their voice, or if they talk slower, talk less, if they're more listening versus kind of talking, softer speech, more monotone, then they're going to be a C or an S, right? So either D or I up at the top, or C, S down at the bottom. Now, let's say you determine, now this person is definitely outgoing, they're direct, they're fast paced, they talk with a loud voice. Then what you need to ask yourself is, okay, are they competitive and direct? Do they have a closed posture? Are they very formal? Are they focused on goals and outcomes and results? And they're focused on the what? If the answer is yes, that would make them a D, versus if the person is more talkative, or more open and casual, they're animated, warm face, and they're more focused on who, then that would make them the I. Okay, so that's kind of the way that your brain should kind of work to figure out what the person is. Now, if they're down in the bottom, they're either the C or the S. What you need to ask yourself, if the person is really like a deep thinker, closed posture, kind of formal, they have that kind of inexpressive face, they're focused on why, you know, that would make them the C. Whereas the person is very accepting, they're very open and casual and calm, and, you know, there's more emotion to them, right? More relaxed, warm face, that would make them the S. Okay, so that's kind of how the brain should kind of work, almost like process of elimination to figure that out. And if all that fails, what I always say is just follow them to the parking lot and see what they drive off in. Right? So we're going to do a little test here. If you've seen this before, don't ruin it for the other guys. Who would, based on what we've discussed so far, who would drive the Ferrari? The D, the I, the S, or the C?
The D.
D.
All right, so you guys are thinking the D. So why would the D drive the Ferrari?
Because it's like a status thing that shows success or power.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anybody on the call who thinks it's not a D? Okay, everybody thinks it's a D. The correct answer is an I.
I almost think because it's fun.
It's fun.
Yeah,
it's
fun?
popular. It's flashy. See, these aren't necessarily flashy. Eyes are more flashy, right? Think of the parrot, the loud colors, right? It's flashy. It's fun. So it's more of the I vehicle. Now let's look at the Honda minivan. So who would drive the Honda minivan?
The S.
So Matt, you said S. Why the S?
Because supportive, caring, family person, maybe.
Okay. Yeah. And then I heard, Myra, you said something.
C.
You said a C. Why a C?
It's a comforter vehicle. Is you can fit more people. Is stronger. Is more secure. Maybe.
Okay. Got it. Alpesh, any thoughts on that?
Say S.
You say an S. Okay. The correct answer is the S, because it is inclusive. You know, think about a van. I mean, you can put a bunch of people in it, right? They can be comfortable. Like you're really thinking of other people, right? You're really not thinking of yourself. Like, who thinks of themselves and buys a van? No one, right? Like this guy here, there's only 2 seats, and to be honest with you, you know, he only needs 1 for himself. Whereas here, right, you fit as many people as you can. You want to be around people. and you want them to be comfortable. Okay, good. So now who drives the Prius?
C.
Let's
That-
see.
That's the C, yeah,
Yeah, and so why do C's drive a Prius?
because they're practical.
That's right. They're logical, right? I mean, you know, C's are very logical thinking type of people. Like, hey, listen, Mr. I, you're an idiot for driving that red Ferrari. My Prius can get me from point A, point B, and I can save so much money. And from a logical perspective, they're right, right? So it's very logical. So who have we not covered?
D.
The D, which should probably be like a Bentley or something.
And exactly.
See, it's funny you say that because
Lexus.
well, the ideal vehicle of a D would be because it's dominance, it's power, right? Now, if it's tough to find one of these, you know, you can find like a Hummer, a big truck. You ever see those guys with the big pickup trucks and the big wheels, right? Anybody who drives a Dodge is a very D. I mean, think about the cars they make. They make Challengers, they make Chargers. Look at the names of Dodge vehicles. They're very, very D-oriented, right? So, so Matt, don't confuse the flashiness over power. It's two different things, right? You can accomplish both. Absolutely, you could. You know, I mean, this Hummer is kind of flashy, right? But the power needs to come in first, right? Cool stuff. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about the final thoughts on each of the four quadrants. So how do we deal with each of the four quadrants? How do we communicate with them, and how do we sell to them? So this is key stuff here. So D's, what do they do best? They take charge, they're competitive, they get things done, they're decisive risk takers, they're fearless, no obstacles too big to overcome, they're focused on the bottom line. What's difficult for a D is repetitiveness, doing the same thing over and over again. Being diplomatic, they can come on too strong in conversations. They hate rules and regulations. They don't like opening up, and it's not because they're shy, but they're just private about personal matters. I's, what do they do best? They inspire people to take action. They think fast on their feet. They're optimistic. They're intuitive and creative. They're full of ideas. Can be impulsive in trying them. They're good at promoting ideas, opportunities, or people. What's difficult for D's is restrictions and routines, reports, keeping detailed records, routine. They get easily bored, absolutely. Redoing anything once it's already been done, absolutely. Huge pet peeve of mine. S's, so what do they do best? They bring harmony to group situations. They're friendly and sensitive. They're good listeners. They build great networks of friends to help do work. Coordinating and cooperating with other people. What's difficult for them is competition, working with dictatorial or unfriendly people. They're slow at making big decisions. They dislike change. They don't like voicing contrary opinions, so they kind of go into their little cave. And then the C's, what do they do best? Is they're highly organized. They even plan spontaneity. They plan thoroughly before deciding to act. They are quick to think, but slow to speak. Planning to meet, they're good at planning, expectations. What's difficult for C's is working with unpredictable people or in disorganized environments, being outgoing and open, closed about personal matters, working with others or in large groups, incomplete or unclear directions. Yep, like me, not doing all of the examples for each of the four, absolutely. So what do D's need to do? So this is advice for D's. And by the way, let's go around the profile. So Matt already alluded to, Matt, you're a C, right? What's your secondary? C what?
I think I'm a CS and then some I there,
Okay,
but I'm working on my D.
Yeah, I know you're working on your D. You came out like a D in the beginning of this year, without a doubt. Myra, what's your profile? Do you have yours in front of you?
No, but I know it's a I.
So you're the I. Do you remember the secondary?
I think it's a S.
Okay, so remember to look into that second one, because that second one is almost as important as that first one. So okay, good. And then Alpesh?
I'm an IS.
IS, got it. Okay, so D's, And by the way, I'm a DI, sometimes ID. They're both almost exact, just since we're all sharing. So Ds need to practice active listening, project a more relaxed image, develop patience, humility, sensitivity, and empathy. Verbalize the reasons for conclusions. Beware of existing sanctions. Verbalize compliments to others. Is need to control their time and emotions, spend more time checking and verifying, specifying and organizing, following through on agreements, concentrate on the task at hand, take a more logical approach, and complete more of what you start. So there was a few I's on the call, including myself, right? Do these sound about right to you guys? Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. S's, there's a lot of kind of S going around on the call as well. Say no every now and then. Complete tasks without worrying about other people's feelings. Take risks by stretching beyond your comfort zone. Delegate. Accept changes in procedures. Verbalize your feelings and thoughts. Good advice there for the S's. And C's, openly show appreciation. Try a shortcut every now and then. Adjust more readily to change and disorganization. Work on timely decision making, compromise with others, use policies as guidelines. Okay, so how do we sell, right? Because we're all salespeople here, so very important. How do we sell to a D? Make sentences short, sweet, and to the point. Give direct answers to questions, very important. Remember that Ds like to innovate and trailblaze, so you want to appeal to them and allow them to do that. Provide high level. Don't give them, too many details on stuff. When I ask somebody, how does that work? I really don't want a 15-minute answer. I really don't, as a D, I really don't want to know how something works. I just want to know that it works, right? Emphasize success. Communicate with confidence. That's very important because Ds are very confident. So if you come across lacking confidence, they're just going to kind of push you aside, right? So you need to be very confident when you're selling to a D. You can be direct with them, so they appreciate candid comments and feedback. Don't be too friendly with them, and just be direct and say, this is what you need to be more successful or productive or whatever, skinny. Just tell them this is what you need. Be direct. Don't be too friendly with them. So you go to a D's office. Oh, you have 3 kids, so tell me about them. What are their names? Where do you come from? What do you like to do on the weekends? D's are like, listen, we're here to do business. We can go out and have a drink and talk about that stuff some other day, but we're here to conduct business. Whereas when you're dealing with an S or an I, you can do a little bit. In fact, with an S, you need to do a lot of that. We'll talk about that in a minute. This is important. So any questions on selling to a D? No? Okay. Selling to an I. Here we go. Win them over. Very important. Let them talk. Be their friend. Show them you care. Have a sense of humor. You can be stern, but don't be too serious. Deal in few details. Assure them it'll be fun and popular, and then let them talk even more. Pretty straightforward, okay? Any questions on how to sell to an I? All right, how to sell to an S. Remember that they take their time making decisions. They don't like pushy salespeople. Build genuine rapport with them. So they're the ones that, oh, where are you from? How many kids do you have? What's your dog's name? All that. They love that stuff, right? So you want to do that. Ask them in the beginning of a decision can be made today. So you want to position that in the beginning, okay? Very important. You need to guide them through the decision process. Remember that they're adverse to change. And keep in mind that they're reserved and casual. So for example, if I know I'm going to a meeting with an S, I may not want to show in a 3-piece suit, I need to be more casual with an S. Selling to any questions? I don't want Matt to jump on me and say, hey, you didn't ask. Any questions on selling to an S? Okay. Selling to a C. Remember that they are the most skeptical and resistant to change. Provide as much information as possible. They want data, they want proof. Don't expect a quick decision. Be prepared for lots of questions. They don't care as much about being friends or having fun. Give them time to think. agree on when to follow up and when a decision will be made. That's very important, so you want to position that. And then they love anything that will increase efficiency, right? So you can sell a C just about anything if you promise that it'll make them more efficient, okay? Any questions on how to sell to a C? All right, so it's, you know, and I wish it was that straightforward and that easy. It kind of is, but it isn't, because remember, they might be a CI or a CS, or right? So that's where you really kind of have to learn this stuff and do your homework with the person that you're meeting, so that you can really go in, because if they're a high C, but they also have like a high I component, it's a completely different creature than a C who has a S component, right? So you really gotta kind of understand and watch them before you kind of adapt and create your presentation. So, you know, ultimately, you know, what is it? But this is kind of a trick question. So what is the best style out there?
There isn't one. They all have strengths and weaknesses.
That's right. And so what DISC really is about is it teaches us to be, like, if you ask a DISC trainer, what should I be? They'll usually say, just be DISC, meaning be all of them. Think of them as like, they're like levers that you can move up and down, like a light switch. And so there are times where you're gonna need to D up, right? If you have an employee who is walking in late for the 5th time in a row, you might need to D up and sit their ass down and have a very stern conversation with them. If an employee comes to you and says, my mom just died, you know, and do you need to like weep with them? Then you cry with them, right? So you need to S up and be human, right? And not, well, this is technically work and you need to leave your personal problems at the door. No, become S, right? If you're giving a talk or a presentation, you might need to I up, right? And be enthusiastic and charming and influential, right? So what you need to realize is, what situation am I in right now? And what would be the best characteristic to have? And once you decide that, turn that dial up, because that's the beauty from all this, is realizing that we all have these dials, and instead of them being fixed the same way all the time, we can move them up or down, right? That's what the main point of understanding DISC. All right, so we're gonna go around the room, and I wanna hear your key takeaways from everyone. So what did you get out of today? What was your big aha or BFO? And you can even throw in there, what are you gonna do differently moving forward? How will you apply this new knowledge? So who wants to go first? Who wants to D up and go first?
All right, I'll go. Oh, no, I think
Go ahead,
you
Matt.
raised your hand. I don't have my video on, sorry. I get it. I just ordered a webcam while we were on here, by the way.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry. Key takeaway was, you know, I've gone over this so many times for so many years, and a lot of the different trainings that I do have DISC embedded in it. But I've never really made a good effort to really try to understand how to leverage it when I'm communicating with people. I always think of my brother-in-law and one of my clients when I think of D, though, because they are the classic, like, dominant, like, high level, up in the clouds visionaries that if I try to explain something in too much detail, I can tell it, their eyes just glaze over and they just like, shut up, just get to the point, answer the question. But anyway, the other thing I wanted to say was I've been reading some sales training, as I mentioned, and they talk about neuro-linguistic kind of programming and stuff like that. And this kind of jives with that a bit. And the only comment I wanted to say was that, I'm not sure if it was on there, but it talks about kind of matching or mirroring, you know, who you're speaking with. So if they speak kind of fast, if they're like a D or an I and they're speaking kind of fast, you might want to pick up the pace a little bit, because if you're speaking slowly, normally they're going to get bored, they're going to stop listening. So, and then the opposite, if somebody's speaking slower, you might want to slow down if you're a fast talker. Same thing with the tonality and the loudness and those things. So.
Yeah, great point. And that's kind of the next level of, once you understand yourself, DISC, and you're being able to read other people's DISC, then yes, as Matt alluded to, the next level to take this to is where you do mirroring or modeling, which is from NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which is basically, yeah, you start becoming like them, right? So if I'm sitting down and I'm selling to an S, I basically begin to behave and model S behavior, right? So I will start to speak a little bit slower, and I'll ask, become a better listener. Even hand postures, gestures, that kind of thing. Absolutely. So thank you for that, Matt. Good takeaway. Who wants to go next? Who had raised their hand?
I'll take it.
Okay, Alpesh, key takeaway.
Key takeaway was, as an one of the things that did pop out was I'm a great starter, but not necessarily a finisher. But the observation is that if I look at some of the clients that I've had difficulty wrapping up projects, they're actually I's as well. And so one of us in that relationship better switch into a D mode to get things done. And so that was important. The other takeaway, something that I've been sharing with my kids, and I think I shared with you on a personal call, was it's not what you say, it's what they hear. But now it makes me realize that the person that I'm speaking to doesn't exist in one dimension. At minimum, you want to start to look at them through the 4 profiles and then try and see what shades they kind of go within that. So again, it may not be, as I've told my kids, it's, as I've been telling them in the past, it's slowing down, but now I'm realizing it's not just slowing down, it's actually how you're framing what it is that you're saying. So if it's a D, be precise. If it's an I, you can get into a long-winded story and they're engaged, but really taking the time, because you put all the effort in, but if you don't go that extra step and really tune it to who you're speaking to, now with that additional awareness of the disc profiles, you might as well be talking to yourself.
Yeah, I love it. Good stuff. Good one there. Let's go to Myra next. Key takeaway for you.
Well, I did this many years ago, so I put in practice for many years. I put that in practice with my clients, but then I realized that with the time you keep forgetting to analyze when you have clients in front of you. So I'm myself, so I'm a very high I, and I remember I always think, oh, okay, I had to change that a little bit, lower the I and increase in something else. So I realized that I had to increase on my S and be able to finish what I start, be more committed, and a couple of things that I need from the S and maybe up to the C or the D. So I had to have a better balance. And I like the idea of the platinum rule, because usually we use the other rule, but then we forget that we have to treat people like they wanted to be treated, not how we think that we want to be treated. So it changed the idea of how to deal with other people completely. So,
I love it. Yeah, imagine we started teaching the platinum rule at an early age, and just, and if we can approach every interaction like that, like, even with our spouses, like, treat them the way they want to be treated, and treat our employees that way, and even customers. Really powerful stuff. Great, Myra. Thank you for that. Alexa, I don't know if your microphone is working. Are you there, Alexa? Let's see. Can't hear Alexa, but it shows that she's still there. Okay, sorry, Alexa. I see that you're there. I'm not sure if I'm not able to hear you or see you. All right, guys, any other questions regarding DISC? If not, then if you haven't read through your lovely 37-page DISC assessment, now would be the time that you can go back, and I promise you it'll make a lot more sense. Best piece of advice I can give you on this is just start practicing. Like, I play these little games when I'm out in public. Like, if I'm standing in line somewhere listening to 2 people, I'm like trying to figure out, that's a D, that's an S. And it's fun to kind of watch a D and an S have a conversation, and the D is over S, and it's just hilarious. Like, I just play these games, and I practice it all the time. I practice it so that I can apply it, and I can honestly say that DISC has really played a role and helped me improve in every aspect of my life. So I hope it'll be impactful for you. I have tons of resources around it. So if you'd like to learn more, we have ebooks, white papers. I think there's some videos. I have all sorts of, through the company that we do this through, I have tons of resources, some free, some paid for. Just reach out and let me know. I'd like to learn more, and we'll set you up with some more stuff. Unless anybody else has anything, guys, we're all done. Thanks for being on the webinar today, and I'll see you guys soon on your weekly calls. Have a good rest of your afternoon.
Great. Everybody have a great day.
Thanks,
Bye.
Juan.
Have a
Take
nice
care.
Thank you. Bye-bye, guys.